Somewhere in the West Virginia mountains, a United States Marine is failing, and it is making no sense to anyone watching, least of all to him. This is not a soft man. He is among the hardest in his entire branch. A recon Marine who has never quit a thing in his life, who has been drilled since the day he stepped on the yellow footprints to never break, never fall out, never let the man beside him down. By every measure that ever mattered in the Corps, he is exactly what a warrior is supposed to be. And here, in this strange Army course, that is part of the problem. Because Delta Force selection is quietly built to punish the very things the Marine Corps spent years building into him. The test is not asking him to be a great Marine. It is asking him to stop being one. And that may be the hardest thing a Marine can be asked to do. You know the name. Delta Force, the unit, the most secretive direct action force the United States Army has ever fielded, run from Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Everyone assumes the hardest part of selection is physical. And if that were true, a Marine would have every advantage, because pound for pound, the Corps produces some of the toughest fighting men on the planet. So here is the strange part. The argument can be made that a Marine walks into Delta selection facing a steeper climb than almost anyone else there, and it has nothing to do with grit or fitness. It is about culture. If you want to understand the trait the Marine Corps builds better than any institution in the military, the one that selection is designed to strip away, subscribe to War Code, because it cuts right to the heart of what Delta is actually hunting for. First, clear up a myth, because this audience will raise it instantly. Marines absolutely can try out for Delta. Unlike SEAL Team 6, which recruits only from the Navy, Delta pools its candidates from across the entire military. Anyone who meets the standard can volunteer, from the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, or the Marine Corps. And in recent years, it has stopped being theoretical. Recon Marines and Marine Raiders have pushed through assessment and selection and moved on to the next phase, and some have earned a place in the unit itself. So this is not a story about whether a Marine is good enough. The men who attempt it are already the elite of an elite branch. This is a story about why the road is built in a way that works against them. It helps to understand who actually gets to try. Delta does not take raw recruits from anyone. The candidates tend to be seasoned, non-commissioned officers, roughly sergeant through master sergeant, or young captains, men with years of service and a hard reputation already behind them. For a Marine, that almost always means he is coming out of the Corps' own special operations world, a recon Marine, or a Marine Raider, someone who has already survived a brutal pipeline just to reach the starting line. So the Marine who shows up at Delta selection is not just any Marine. He is the sharpened tip of the spear of a branch that does not produce soft men, which makes what happens to him on that course all the more revealing. Start with the simple fact of the room. Delta was born an Army unit, designed by an Army officer, and its candidate pool has always been overwhelmingly Army. By one retired operator's account, a selection class might run around 60% Green Berets, close to 40% Rangers, and a tiny sliver of everyone else, the rare cook or mechanic or outsider who talked his way in. A Marine walking into that course is stepping into a world built by and for soldiers, surrounded by men who came up through Army schools, speak the Army's language, and were shaped by the Army's way of war. Before the first ruck is even shouldered, the Marine is the outsider in someone else's house. That alone is a quiet, constant friction the Green Berets and Rangers never feel. There is a structural reason Marines are so thin on the ground in that selection class, and it comes down to history. The Army has been growing special operations soldiers for generations. The Green Berets and the Rangers are old, deep institutions with established pathways that funnel their best people toward units like Delta. The Marine Corps came to the modern special operations world late. Marine Special Operations Command, the home of the Raiders, was not even created until 2006, decades after Delta was already running missions. That means the Corps simply has a smaller, younger pool of operators moving through the kind of career that points toward Delta in the first place. The Marine is not only an outsider in the room, he comes from a branch that only recently built the on-ramp at all. But the real obstacle runs far deeper than that, and it is woven into the Marine's very identity. The Marine Corps is, by design, the most collective warrior culture in the American military. From the first hour of boot camp, the institution sets out to dissolve the individual into the unit. The recruit loses his first name. He becomes part of a whole, drilled relentlessly toward uniformity, obedience, and a discipline so total that the group moves and thinks as one body. Every Marine, a rifleman, the needs of the Corps before the needs of the self. It is one of the most effective systems for forging cohesion that humanity has ever built, and it produces a fighting force whose discipline is the envy of the world. The Marine does not just belong to the Corps becomes who he is. To understand how deep that conditioning runs, go back to where it starts. From the moment a recruit steps onto the yellow footprints at boot camp, the Corps begins a deliberate, relentless process of taking him apart and rebuilding him as a piece of something larger. The shaved head, the lost name, the drill instructors in his face, the endless close-order drill until an entire platoon moves like a single organism. It is not random cruelty. It is one of the most refined systems on Earth for erasing the individual and replacing him with the group. By the time a man earns the title Marine, the lesson has been burned into his nervous system. You are never alone. You never act alone. The unit is everything, and you are nothing without it. That belief has kept Marines alive in the worst fights in American history. It is also the exact belief Delta Selection is designed to take away. Now look at what Delta Selection rewards, and the collision becomes obvious. The course is built on radical individualism. It sends a man out alone, with no team beside him, no formation to fall into, no leader giving orders, and no standard to march toward. It removes every form of feedback and approval, the exact scaffolding the Corps trained him to depend on. It asks him to generate his own direction in total silence, to make decisions with no right answer, and no one to confirm them, and to keep functioning when everything collective and familiar has been stripped away. The Marine has spent his whole career learning to be a flawless part of a machine. Delta Selection takes the machine away and demands to see what the single part can do entirely on its own. If you have made it this far, you are already one of us. Cadets get every video 24 hours early and a badge in the comments. The link is below. Watch how the Marine's greatest strengths quietly turn into liabilities on that course. His instinct to never break formation is useless when there is no formation. His reflex to rely on his brothers becomes a wound when he is deliberately isolated for days. His deep respect for rank and the chain of command counts for nothing in a culture that runs flat, where a sergeant's judgment outweighs an officer's bars, and nobody is coming to tell him what right looks like. Even his bone-deep refusal to quit can betray him, because the course is engineered to let a man grind himself into the ground chasing a finish line that does not exist, and a Marine conditioned to push until he is told to stop is the perfect candidate to do exactly that. Everything the Corps sharpened in him was sharpened for a different fight. Picture it from inside the Marine's own head. He reaches a checkpoint after hours of moving alone, soaked and exhausted, and every reflex he owns fires at once. He looks for the team that is not there. He waits for the order that never comes. He searches the cadre member's face for the smallest sign of how he is doing, the feedback the Corps trained him to read and react to, and he finds nothing but a flat stare and a new grid coordinate. The structure he has leaned on his entire career has been quietly removed, and the silence where it used to be is deafening. A candidate who was never as deeply wired into the collective can shrug that off. The Marine has to fight his own instincts at every single step, and that is an exhausting second war to wage on top of the course itself. There is an emotional weight to this that the fitness tables never capture. For a Marine, the Corps is not a job he can clock out of. It is a brotherhood, a faith, an identity he wears for life, summed up in 2 words he will never stop believing. Once a Marine, Delta Selection, in a sense, asks him to set that identity down on the trail and prove he can stand as just a man, stripped of the title and the tribe that have defined him. For a soldier whose sense of self is less totally fused to his branch, that ask is lighter. For a Marine, it can feel like being asked to walk away from the thing he loves most in order to join something he is not even allowed to talk about. That is a heavy thing to carry up a mountain in the dark. This is also where honesty matters, because this audience knows the difference between an argument and a fact. There is no public statistic that proves Marines wash out of Delta Selection at a higher rate than Army candidates. The brutal truth is that selection fails roughly 9 out of 10 of everyone, Green Beret, Ranger, and Marine alike. So this is not a claim about a scoreboard. It is a claim about the nature of the climb. The Green Beret and the Ranger are adjusting from one Army Special Operations culture to another. The Marine is crossing a much wider cultural gulf, unlearning a way of being a warrior that is, in some ways, the opposite of what this test demands. The distance he has to travel inside his own head is simply longer, and none of this is a mark against the Corps. If anything, it is a backhanded tribute to how completely the Marine Corps does its job. The reason a Marine struggles with Delta's radical individualism is that the Corps succeeded so thoroughly at making him a part of something bigger than himself. That conditioning is not a weakness. On a beach, in a breach, in the kind of war the Marines are built to fight, that cohesion is a superpower. It just happens to be the precise opposite of what a man needs when he is alone on a mountain with no one watching and no one to rely on but himself. The Marine who does pass selection has done something genuinely extraordinary. He has not only survived the course, he has overcome his own forging, bridged two opposite warrior cultures, and proven he can be both the ultimate team man and the ultimate lone operator. That is why the recon Marines and Raiders who have made it into the unit are so respected. They did the hardest version of an already impossible thing. And that is exactly why Delta keeps the door open to them. The unit was built, from its first day, to pull the very best from wherever they could be found. And a recon Marine or a Raider who can bridge that cultural gulf brings something the Army-born operators cannot. A different way of seeing a problem, a different set of hard-won instincts, a toughness forged in a different fire. The Marine who makes it through has not been broken by the cultural distance. He has been proven by it. He carried everything the Corps gave him, set down only the parts that did not fit the mission, and arrived as something rarer than almost anyone else in the building. A man equally lethal as a perfect part of the whole, and as a lone operator with no one watching at all. So here is the part worth arguing about, and I want the Marines, the soldiers, and the serious students of this in the comments, because this one is going to sting either way. A Marine's struggle in Delta selection is not proof that the Corps builds lesser warriors. It is proof that the Corps builds a different kind of warrior, one forged so completely for the collective that the lone operator test is the hardest cultural leap in the entire military. Tell me whether that is a failing of the Marine or a triumph of the Corps. Tell me which culture you would rather have in the fight, the one that makes a man a perfect part of the whole, or the one that makes him lethal entirely alone. Official members get the parts that do not survive the public versions, the names and the details we cut before publish. The door is below.